This is pretty relevant. Whether it's for maternity leave or not, like this, like the way Megan and I are planning this and looking at this is like, we would use this same thing if I was taking like an extended vacation or leave or whatever. And so I think, maternity leave gives us an excuse. Sometimes, I don't know if excuse is the right word, but it lets us take that time, because it feels like, of course I would have to, but you can take other time off in your business. That's not about maternity leave. And this could be very useful to it, or for it as well. Like I had a client get married and take, pretty extended, like over a month off, for that and for her honeymoon and things like that. So anyway, like the point is, this doesn't have to just be for maternity leave, but I think it's just helpful to look at it through the context of like anytime we're planning like longer time away kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think it'll probably be helpful if I just start and share what our plan is, because obviously our clients know this, but I'm sure a lot of people on here don't. So that will be helpful. So basically what I'm doing is my due date is April 14th, TBD, right? But basically, I am planning to take from when I deliver to the very beginning of July. So give or take, it's going to be about 3 full months. And then off completely. And then in July, I'm coming back, but I'm only coming back part-time. So most of my clients have 3 sessions per month, but everyone's getting 1 session per month. So that way, I can kind of get used to that transition point back in. I can touch base with everyone, but I'm not kind of going 0 to 60. That was something that was like really important to me personally. Like I know how it feels to come back from a vacation and go 0 to 60. And it's a lot. Megan and I just talked about this recently because Megan had a long vacation, and not long, but like, I think you had 2, I
had 2 kind of like back to back, like 2
yeah.
or something. Mm-hmm.
And like, it's just a lot. And so that was like a big, like thing that felt important to me, is that I didn't want to come back and feel like, okay, I've just been off for 3 months and now I'm like fully back in. So that's something I would like say to consider, whether that's for a vacation or maternity leave or otherwise, like what feels best to you and what feels good there. And like, don't be afraid to ask for what it is you want. So we'll talk about that, but that's what I'm doing. And then, full-time back in August. So in April, we're prorating our clients' percentages, from our partnership, because I'll probably only work about half the month. So they'll only pay 50% of their percentages for the following month. May and June, we're not making any income. And then July, we're obviously prorating their base rate because we're only doing 1 session. So there are like many moving parts here, sort of, and Megan can speak to that and how she's keeping all that straight. But what I think is important to say there is like, it was worth it for us to do those moving parts so that clients felt really comfortable, but also so that I felt really comfortable that I was getting the experience that I wanted to, as opposed to feeling like, well, it has to be this, like, I couldn't just do 1 session a month because like, that's not the agreement with clients. Like I can ask and say, hey, I'm available for 1 session a month. Like, are you guys available for that? And the answer is yes, everybody has been. Like people will understand. And so that's been a big part, but I'll kind of just shut up for a second since I said all that and let Megan take over here and just share, like, is there anything that I missed there? Is there anything like that feels important to say? Or if you just want to talk about kind of what that's starting to look like, that would be great.
Yeah. So I think, well, one of the things we're doing too is that for clients, I'm going to be doing like office hours for them so that they have like some type of like, I'll do 2 per month. And so they can come and like ask questions and get a little bit of like touch base support in the meantime. So I think that like during Lacey's like off months. So I think that that's like one of the other things that we're doing. And then I know, do you want to talk on like the marketing side of things in terms of like what we're doing, kind of like front facing type of stuff too?
Yeah, totally. Actually, there's one other point I want to make though, before we go to that. So Jess said she came back with a full month of no clients and just marketing and stuff. And it was awesome. So yeah, I totally think having that transition makes a difference. Yes, exactly. Machine. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Hey, Hannah, thank you. I'm so glad you love it. Hey, Obi. So the one thing I want to address there specifically, and then before we get into even more details, because I feel like this is a whole thing and it feels important to say, is I personally chose not to get paid for those couple months because it's what felt best to me. I feel like I could get on a soapbox about this for a long ass time, so I won't, but I feel like there's so much pressure on women to either like fucking suck it up and deal with it. And like, oh, you're going to have a baby. And so like, you should just deal with making less money, which I think is like very much the corporate mentality. But I think the entrepreneur mentality is just as fucked, which is like, if your business revenue goes down at all while you do any of this, you're doing it wrong. And I think that's super fucked too. And it drives me bananas. Like, I am busy having a baby. If I am not also making, 100K months while that's happening, that's okay. Because it just doesn't fit my business model as well. There's a lot of other things I would have had to change. Do I believe that it was possible for us to make those changes? 100%. I even like, I feel so blessed with like the most amazing clients who, many of them, when I told them I was taking like those 2 months, were like, no, we still want to pay you during that time. Like, no. And I was like, we're good. I appreciate that so much. But like, this feels like a good exchange for me. But the point I want to make there is that like, yes, you can design your business so that you don't have a dip, in pay while you take maternity leave. And most of my clients have chosen to do that. Or you can decide that like, it's okay to, and you don't want to make those changes. And so, because I have a few months where I'm not making, the like percentage and revenue and all of that this year, like my revenue could definitely go down, like, and being okay with that just feels really important. And I just kind of want to be a voice for owning that doesn't have to be wrong or bad. That doesn't make me a bad business owner or, suggest that I don't know what I'm doing. I think it suggests that like, we all get to do whatever the fuck we want. So it just feels really important for me to say that, because I think that that's an easy spot to get tripped up in.
And I think it's just helpful on the team side too, to kind of like, for the business owner to have a plan, whatever that looks like, whatever that is, but just to kind of know what that is and be able to communicate that with the team. So it's not like the month before you go on maternity leave and you're like, oh, hey, by the way, I really want to increase our income before I go, know what I mean? Like, yes, let's launch something new, or let's figure, so I think that like planning ahead and really knowing what feels best for you and what that looks like is super helpful. And obviously for you in terms of like, just like projections and stuff like that, but also for your team and kind of knowing what to expect, like leading up to that as well.
Yeah. So basically what I did is like, when I found out that I was pregnant, I figured out how much it costs to like maintain my own personal expenses and run our team for, the X amount of months that I'm going to be off. And then I divided that. This is like very simple math, but it's worth saying. And then I divided that over the, 7 months I had coming up at that time that I was planning it. And I've put aside that much money every single month. So I have like a specific savings account that's just a maternity leave savings account that I knew would cover team expenses, that I knew would cover whatever personal expenses I needed to cover, and have just been putting money in there for 7 months. So it's also been helpful because I planned well in advance, that which is like the value of being on maternity, is that you have 9 months, but it's not ever felt like a huge pinch where like Megan said, I was trying to like make up profit or revenue in like a month window or something. Like I've been planning on putting it aside for that long. And I knew I needed to have that much extra, so to speak, each month. So that's just been how I've done it and has been really personally helpful for me to feel pretty solid and knowing that I can both take care of what I need to, pay the team, and, you know, not feel like this like 30-day pressure to do that in any one period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you have questions about that, let me know. Oh, good. I'm so glad it's helpful, Obi. Yes, Nasheen, strong boundaries. I realized I need to define my boundaries this morning, 100%. So, and it's also really helpful for the people you're defining your boundaries with. Like my clients wouldn't necessarily know to offer and say, hey, if you only want to do one session the month that you're back, great. But they can say yes or no to that. Like, so making that request is like really helpful, I think, too. Okay, Megan, yes, let's talk about what it looks like outwardly too, because I don't think I mentioned any of that.
So I think that this is where a lot of like the content repurposing really comes in. So we are essentially, for the most part, I would say most things that we are doing while Lacey is off are almost either the same or just like very slightly different as like the content and the frequency and all of that we normally put out. We might change like some small differences, but the biggest thing is that it's not necessarily going to be new stuff happening. It's going to be repurposed. And so we're very mindfully like going back and kind of pulling, going to be sharing, like resharing old things and kind of like just pulling from the archive, so to speak, with a lot of the content that's going out so that, you know, I think that it helps in a lot of different ways. Number one, obviously, just like with consistency and like so that, you know, like the like visibility and consistency is still there. You're still maintaining like connections with your audience and still staying top of mind in that sense. But even just like team hours, you know, keeping up with like making sure that those hours are still and those tasks are still like happening for the team so that they know what they can rely on. And it's not this really big shift in terms of hours for them during those months as well.
Yes. So that was something that I think probably before I ever even announced my maternity leave publicly, we announced to the team like, hey, I'm pregnant. I will be on maternity leave at this point in time, but your hours aren't going to be affected, because that just felt really important to us, that it wasn't like, and hey, plan to have everything cut in half, because I want those team members to want to be there when I come back. Like it's such a short, I mean, 3 months is like such a short amount of time if you really think about it. And so I didn't want the team to have to like go find other positions or other work during that time, right? And then I come back and now we have to rebuild a team. So that's something to think about too. You know, I think sometimes we take that for granted. Like it's easy to just be like, oh, and then I'll just like cut those hours way down and then I'll do this. And but like we forget there are like humans who also have like numbers they need to meet and things like that on the other side. And so kind of putting them in such a difficult position for a few months was not at all something that we were interested in doing. So that's really something to think about here too. Like, obviously if I told them 7 months in advance, like it would have been fine. They would have figured it out. But the difference being I didn't want to cut them long-term. So for those 3 months, you know, we would have been in a situation on the other side of it because they probably would have found other work, you know?
Right. I think the biggest thing is just like knowing what's important to you there and what you want to happen and what you want that to look like, and being able to communicate that to like your team. And then like we were talking about earlier with, you know, the sessions and what client work would look like, just really being able to define that early and communicating that early with your people as well.
Yes, totally. Will you still be publishing content while you're on maternity leave? Yes, definitely, Roxana. Hi, Julia. Nasheen said the benefits of systematizing. Totally. And yeah, the human approach and caring for your team. Exactly. Like it's so important that like we're thinking about things holistically. It's not just about like, what is Lacey doing? It's like, how does it impact our team? How does it impact our clients? Like that is kind of like the bigger conversation. So another thing that was really important to me, and Megan, I think you could talk about this from your side too, but I really personally wanted to have everything done 1 month before my maternity leave for several reasons. One, I didn't feel like being stressed the last month of my pregnancy. Two, I know several people who are entrepreneurs who have gone into labor several weeks early. And so I just, wanted to not kind of have that happen and leave team in a lurch or clients in a lurch by any means. And I wanted to feel like if there were any loose ends, we had the time to clean it up. So what I tell a lot of my clients is almost have practice maternity leave before you're on maternity leave kind of thing. So that's sort of it, what we're doing, like the practice of like not having, me do 30 extra things or whatever the month before. And that's been really good. But the reason I think we even ended up doing it earlier than a month.
I think it was like a month and a half or like pushing 2 months almost.
Yeah. And so what was like the only reason that happened is Megan, basically, which we can talk about, but like, it's because we knew what needed to happen. So I think like that's the thing that you have to keep coming back to here is like, do you know like what the plan is? And then do you know what needs to happen from there? Like the only reason we got all that done is because it was so clear. Like I was just working through a checklist of shit that needed to happen. So yeah, maybe talk about that, Megan.
Yeah. So basically I think, let me give a little bit of context here. So like essentially as soon as Lacey told me that she was pregnant, we started to basically have planning sessions, like maternity leave planning sessions together. So I think that we had one kind of like right away. I think that was like sometime in September. We had another one in like November or December. And then once we got closer, we started to do them every month. And so I think that was really important to have separate sessions where they weren't kind of our normal check-ins and regular check-ins. We were specifically just doing like talking through maternity leave planning stuff so that we could really intentionally plan for those things. So during those calls, we just walked through what are all the things. We kind of separated out into client type of work and then marketing side of things, and just walked through some of the details of what are the things that we do right now. We do live streams, we do client lessons, we do, what else? Newsletters and Instagram and Facebook, right? So like we kind of listed out all of the things that we currently do. And then we just talked through like, what do you want that to look like during those 3 months? Mm-hmm. And kind of created a plan. And then from there, once we identified what that would look like, then we kind of identified what do we need from Lacey ahead of time, even down to, like some of the emails and like kind of details of what that would look like and stuff like that. So we could kind of like also map it out so that it wasn't like, a couple of weeks before and we're like, oh, hey, by the way, like we need all of these extra things. And then you're scrambling last minute to produce a ton of content or something to, make sure that we have everything that we need for those months.
Yes, totally. Michelle asked a question that we were going to tell you later, but we will tell you now. She said, this is super into the details, but what's the date of your last live stream and when will you resume them? So my last live stream personally will be April 4th. And what we are actually going to do, which I'm so excited about, I just think it's going to be so great, is many of my millionaire makers, and like that's the mastermind I have for my long-term clients. So my like very long-term clients are all coming each week to do a live stream. Most are doing it Monday at 1. Obviously there's some time zone stuff. So some people are doing it slightly different times, but you guys are still going to have a live in here every week, and it's going to be really, really valuable. I've already gone through all of their topics, their, it's like live stream titles, all of that kind of stuff. And they're really good, and it's going to be super exciting. So we'll see if you guys even are excited for me to be back in August. But actually I'm coming back in July, right?
Yes. So I think, I want to say July 11th is going to be the first live stream that you're doing again.
Yeah. So I will, yes, that makes sense. Okay. So I will be back July 11th. So they're taking over April 11th to July 11th. And there's one every single week. So that will still be brand new content. That's really, really good. And then, I will be back July 11th. And so that also took a lot of planning. Megan, bless you. It's like herding cats. But like that also took a lot of planning to be like, hey, we need like to reach out to everyone to make sure they want it, to coordinate dates. So it's just really helpful knowing these things in advance. But like Megan said, the live stream is a perfect example of us sitting down and being like, okay, what do you do every week? Live streams. Okay. How are we going to do that? Are we just going to like, share old ones? Are we just going to take that time off? Like what makes the most sense? And so because like the client piece made so much sense, like we had the window to do that. But if I had thought of that like now, it would be such a scramble.
Right. And I think that like
everyone thinks it's fun. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I've been so excited to tell you guys that.
I feel like it'll be so fun too, because I just think that like I'm really excited to have that as an opportunity to also still have new content coming out in the group too, where obviously we are going to be repurposing a lot of like content and stuff that, I mean, quite honestly, a lot of the content that we're going to be repurposing will probably seem new to a lot of people just because like there's so much, and
we also did like a best of kind of thing. So you're kind of getting like the best of the best stuff, which is cool.
Yes. Yeah. And then we will also be having the podcast coming out. So I think that that's probably a good example of what we did with the podcast too, because so the season 6 of Literally is the first 2 episodes released this week. So that's on today's Monday, Wednesday, the first 2 episodes release. And then, so basically those new episodes are going to be going out starting this week, but Lacey and Michelle had actually started coaching quite a long time ago, so that everything was recorded ahead of time so that we could release these episodes and have this new content going out during maternity leave.
Yep. We started in October, I think. So I was like 12 weeks pregnant at that point, I think. Like that was like, not a thing.
Yeah.
I talked about this last week because Michelle was on too. And I said like the hysterical part is Michelle is probably one of the like first 4 people I told I was pregnant or something like that, because I have the timing. But like that is the value of planning early, is that now we get to have like a ton of great content going out. Oh, Jess, that makes me almost cry actually. Maybe it's just pregnancy hormones at this point. But she said, how cool is it that you've created a culture where your people are so into not only you, but everyone around you? I really do have really good clients. Today's post accidentally said they come out on June 23rd. No, you do not have to wait for June. Our bad. It's definitely like 2 days from now. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Michelle. I would. She said I would have cried even if I wasn't pregnant. Don't play. But yeah, like I think it's just really helpful to be like, and the other thing that I want to say there is not only is it like, what are we doing, but it's okay if things look different. That's like a big mantra that I remind myself and my clients when they're taking time off. Like, I think sometimes we do this thing to ourselves where we like feel like we quote unquote can't take time off. And what we're really saying is things can't look different. But like, it's okay that it looks like my clients are going to be in here instead of me. It's okay that it looks like July I'm only doing 1 session or whatever. Like it's fine that these things look different. And so I think that's just really important to remember as well, is that the goal of taking extended time off isn't make everything look perfectly the same no matter what. The goal is like, how can like you still serve in the way you want to serve and show up in the way you want to show up. So for me, like, it's not about Lacey being on live every week. It's about like, it's really important to me to pour into this community. So there is a way for us to do that. It doesn't have to look a certain way. So I think that's just like a really good permission slip to give yourself when you're thinking about these things, is like what would it look like if it could just look however you wanted it to, instead of it having to look the same way it always does.
And I think it's one of those things where like, I think that it's super helpful to know kind of what the goal is, and what, like you said, you know, like the goal is to pour into the community and, you know, give super valuable content and all of that. And so kind of just asking yourself, like, how could that look differently? And what can we do a little bit differently that kind of achieves the same goal? I think that that's really important, a really important question to ask yourself as you're kind of figuring out like some of the details of what you're planning for.
Yep, for sure. Something else that I wanted to touch on, Megan, that I think you actually said this to me recently, but I think would be good to get your take on, because I think people need to hear this part too, is that like, basically we were talking about how it seems like it would be easier to kind of like plan being off, because I have one-on-one clients and I'm just not seeing them during that period of time, but it's actually been a lot more work, I think, in some sense, having a one-on-one business. And I don't say that to say like, oh, poor me, it's been a lot more work at all. But I say that to say like, it's okay if these things take effort. I think that we have such a mentality in our industry of that, like, if you can't just like drop your shit and run, you've not created a freedom-based business, or you don't have like a great business, or you're not a great CEO. And I just totally don't buy that. Like, I think I've created an amazing business that requires me to be a CEO of it. And so if I can't be the CEO of it, it also requires planning and that's okay. But talk a little bit about like the one-on-one part and how that's been like a lot to navigate.
Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing, I mean, it is a one-on-one coaching container. So it is a very like individual thing, right? Where like, you know, you're not just kind of like blasting like a big like mastermind or something like that of like, hey, this is what's changing and this is the same for everyone. Yeah. Like so there is there's a lot of like individual decisions from the clients that need to be made of like, and everybody's packages kind of are starting at different times. And so, you know, some people are like just re-sign, like they're ending their package now-ish and re-signing and starting a new thing in July. And that's great. Some people are kind of in the middle. And so there's just a lot of like kind of nuanced details that are happening where, you know, plus with the different changes in prorating percentages and then base rates and stuff like that. So there are kind of a lot of different moving pieces. And because it's one-on-one, everyone's a little bit different in terms of how that specifically looks. And then obviously with like scheduling and stuff like that and different time zones and everything. So I think it's just one of those things where one-on-one looks kind of like almost seems simpler, but in some ways just does require a little bit more like detailed planning because of it being a more personal and individual service versus something that like is just looks exactly the same for everybody type of thing, like for a mastermind or group coaching or membership or something like that.
Totally. And I'm actually going to do a separate live stream coming up. I can't remember what date, but I mean, we only have like
only a few more.
Yeah, we have like 2 or 3 more, so it's soon. But I'm going to talk about like basically all my clients are staying on through maternity leave, and I think that's really cool and special. And I'm going to talk about a lot of like the why behind that and stuff like that too. So we'll get into like more of the client side of that on there. But yeah, like I think that again, it's taken a lot of like individualized attention and planning and stuff like that. And so just what has been cool though, and I really think this is important to say, is that because we have so much other stuff that we can leverage in terms of like content and things like that, we've been able to put our attention towards that. It's not been like this frantic, like, oh my God, we have to create all of this shit. And then we kind of like are dropping balls on like other things. It's been actually like, we have to make sure our clients feel really good and stable and happy and clear and all of those things. And the rest, like we can repurpose that, we can figure that out. And so that is like the value of having content you can repurpose. Even if you're like, I have no need for like maternity leave or a long-term vacation right now. Trust me, there will be I would have said that a long time ago too. There will be a point where you are like thanking your lucky stars that you like have shit that you can like go to and use like that. So you can like really dedicate your time to the things that matter.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you think it's fun, Michelle. I really do too. And if I mean, you know, I don't even pretend to know what it's going to be like when the baby's here, but I'm like looking forward to maybe jumping on some of them if I can too, just like watching in the background or whatever. It's amazing how you looked at it all from a place that there is a solution rather than freak out. And talking about freak out, there were some freakouts you had to work through to get, were there some freakouts you had to work through to get to the solutions? Oh, such a good question. Were there freakouts? I don't think I had any logistical freakouts, although Megan, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, because I feel like maybe I'm rose-colored glassesing myself here. But I definitely had to work through the idea of like, you know, are all my clients going to be like, fuck off, that's a long time? Or like, you know, will everybody feel cool with the idea of like coming back for one session or prorated rates at different points and stuff like that? And I just had to like really decide that like, it would be okay if they didn't. Honestly, that was like my biggest mindset thing that I had to get on board with, instead of being like, what helped me more was not to be like, it's fine, they're going to think it's fine. Almost what helped me more was to be like, if they don't, I still love them. I still appreciate them. I will still coach the shit out of them till then. And I still kind of like, you know, feel good about that and wish them the best. And so that was like my biggest personal thing. And then also, you know, just deciding like, it's cool to not get paid for a few months, I think was one that I just had to get on board with. And that's why I feel like so passionate about like talking about that and owning that now. Cause I feel like when I really looked at that, I was like, none of this is about me. Like, it's fine if I don't take pay. It's about like what the perception of that can be in our space and stuff. And so that was also one, but I don't know. Did I have any logistical freakouts?
I think a little bit. There was a moment where we were starting to actually plan more details of what does your schedule look like after maternity leave.
You're so right. Yes. Go ahead. You can tell from your perspective.
So we were basically kind of talking through like different availability and stuff. And I think it was all fine because I was in the details a little bit more, but yes. Anytime that you did have to be in the details of just looking at some of the scheduling stuff, I think that there were moments of a little bit like, holy shit, how are we, like, what is this going to look like? Or like, you know, something like that. I don't know. Do you remember? Right.
Yes. I think for me, you know, like it's almost like, I'm so excited to have this baby. So I do not take this in a bad way, but it feels like there's this like black hole out here where it's like, I know what life looks like now. And then there's just this big black hole. Like I don't want to pretend like I know what it's going to look like almost, but then having to make decisions about things that are happening in the black hole was overwhelming me a little bit of like, how many sessions do I want to take a week? Would it be better if I had one at 10 or 3? Like, fuck, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? So Megan's totally right. And I remember like messaging her one night, I think it was probably like 9 o'clock at night, being like, I want to redo all of this. And she was so gracious about it. But, you know, ultimately, like what that came back to for me, and Megan has been so supportive about this, is just being like, it is a black hole. So we're just going to pick something. And then if it changes, it changes. And that's totally okay. But like, just that idea of like, we're picking it for now, instead of like, this is what you're picking. And then you may never change that 2:00 appointment ever. Like, that's obviously not true. So it just like, I had to get on board with that, you know?
I do also think that it is really important to at least make those decisions. And because I think that obviously there's a lot of planning that goes in, like you're planning ahead of your maternity leave, what's going to happen during maternity leave. But I do think a lot of our time has actually also been spent planning after maternity leave as much as we possibly can. And so I think that it's important to kind of talk through that and, you know, even like talk through it with your team in terms of like, what does your transition back look like? And then what does I'm 100% full-time back look like? Because 100% full-time back might look very different than what it does now, right? And so I think that just kind of talking through that and making a plan, knowing that the plan can change, but it's easier to change, like to shift from some type of like basis and some type of plan versus like having no plan and just making that up. Like, oh, I'll figure it out how I feel, you know, in August or whatever. Like, it's going to be easier for us to kind of shift if that needs to happen versus just start from scratch at that point.
So true. Oh, good. Jess says the black hole feeling is normal. Good. I'm like, I really am excited, but also there's this black hole. It's fine. Yes, it can be overwhelming. At the core of all of this is whatever the outcome, it's going to be okay. A lot of self-trust in that. 100%. Yeah. Michelle said, I'm curious to know how your session availability is changing and how you're managing childcare, but that might be a totally different combo, but that's the thing on my mind. Yeah. So basically what we're kind of moving to with clients is, up to this point in my business, I've never really had like recurring set sessions or something like that. I put availability on a calendar, clients book. I guess there's been like some of that occasionally if like we have like very, very, very different time zones or something and we need to reserve a spot for them. But in general, I've always been pretty lax about it because my schedule has been able to be. So what we're doing on the other side of maternity leave, which Megan has spearheaded this whole project, thank God, because I truly could not. This is why we have people on our team that are better at things than us, because I think I would have just spontaneously combusted trying to do this. So thank God for Megan. But we've switched most people to a recurring appointment time. So that way, like, I just know when my sessions are. And so it makes it easier to have childcare and also have sessions at times that I know I have that. So that's really helpful. We're going to have, at this point, kind of like a little bit of a combination there of my mom being Bennett's full-time caregiver and probably a part-time nanny as well. So it's not that I don't have that in place, but it's that I need a plan to also tell them, right? Like, I know myself enough that on a Monday, I don't want to be like, well, this Monday I have a session at this time and this time, but then next Monday it's different. It's this and this. And then the following week that would have been a lot. So what we've really tried to do is like, just take it. So it's like pretty much every weekday, or at least the recurring weekdays look the same. Like every Monday looks the same, every Tuesday looks the same, that kind of thing. So that I have that. And then we also really intentionally created some off days each month, whether that's because I want to like take Bennett to a doctor's appointment or have time to work on my business where I don't have calls, but like Megan like really thought through all of those pieces. I don't know if you want to talk about the headache that was that, but
And I think that it's one of those things where like, it felt really overwhelming at first, just because there were so many small logistical pieces to fit together. But I feel like, number one, clients have been so receptive to the idea and just like really on board. Either people are like, oh my God, that works better for me. Or they're like, hey, I'm flexible, like whatever's easier for you guys. And then like, and not everybody's going to be on a recurring call or recurring time, but then it just makes it easier to have a little bit
other times they can book. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that was like really, really great. And we're very fortunate for everybody being so flexible and so on board with that idea and that shift, which has been really cool. But I think that it was one of those things where, again, kind of like starting to define certain aspects. And then we started kind of planning this pretty early. And then I would like step away and like kind of do it in chunks, so to speak, where it was like, I had the space to be able to plan in chunks and then come up with new questions. Like, hey, this, whatever, I don't know, but like, we need to also like come up with a plan for this thing. And so I think that was really useful. And again, kind of talking to like the benefit of planning really early so that you can kind of like break it up into smaller bits, and also so that you can start to kind of shift things and figure things out as different questions come up once you get closer to that.
Yeah. And actually, I think like, I don't know that you even did this on purpose for me, but it worked so perfectly for me. Maybe you did, but I could only handle it in chunks too, or I would have gotten super overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it was really nice that it was like, okay, like first we pick like what's our availability, then we start having some of these client conversations, then we start putting things on a calendar. That like it was gradual, but if that all had to happen in like a 3-week period, that would have been what made me lose it, you guys.
Like, I would have lost it.
That would have been it. Like, I really have not had like a full on meltdown moment. Maybe like one in pregnancy, but that would have been the one for fucking sure. So thank goodness we did it in chunks. But yeah, I think you're so right. It really speaks to like, this is why you give yourself the time. And again, this is where you can be okay with things looking different. Like, I could have gotten really worked up in my head of like, but clients have always been able to schedule whenever. And like, is that going to be a whole thing? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it hasn't been at all. And so it's just like great not to make it one. So smart to create exact times for these appointments. Yeah, I think that will make a big difference. Jenny's loving this conversation. Thank you, Jenny. Kristen said, clients understanding feels so much like everyone are women here. We're all in the same boat and want the same understanding. So we totally want our people to have it too. 100% that has been my experience. Like everyone has been amazing and being like, whatever you need, we support you. So many of my clients have been like, if you want to breastfeed on a call, bring the baby to a call anytime. Like, I'm just so grateful that we have such like a beautiful community of support around that. Okay, so we already told you about clients taking over live streams. So I think that that we covered that, but that was just like a little note I had because I was really excited about that. But I'm so glad you guys are excited too. And like, definitely please come and support them. Like, they're doing it just to be supportive of this community too, which is like really incredible. So that would be great. What else feels important to say here? Can you think of anything, Megan? Oh, it's okay, Stephanie. It is starting. Well, my due date's April 14th, and it's going to be about 3 months or so. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else feels important to say that we did. Oh, one other little thing I think that I want to talk about is like the repurposing piece, because I think people get freaked out here. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, Megan, where people can almost be like, think that content is like not as good or less than or something. Like, I'm not saying mine, but I'm saying like in your own business, it can be like, oh, but and I really look at it like, yes, because number one, we get to do like the best up kind of stuff. Like, I was going through some of the client lessons we're repurposing the other day, and I was like, yes, Lacey, these were some of your good ones. Like, where has this been? But really like giving yourself the mindset shift and permission to own that, of like, how can your repurposed content sometimes be your best content? Like, I know for me, when I was even going through those client lessons, I was remembering like that conversation with the client or where I was at in my business at that time or whatever. And I was thinking like, oh, I wouldn't have like thought to say that today, but like, that was so important at that moment. And like, people need to hear it because they're at all different moments in their business. And so just like looking at that in your own space, like whether you're taking a week off for vacation or 3 months, like, I think we like really trip ourselves up thinking that like, it's fine to repurpose, but it's not great. Mm-hmm. And I think like, so not the case at all, in my opinion. I noticed that some of the content we even repurpose now that was older stuff of mine sometimes does better because it's just resonating with people more of like where they were at that time, or where I was at that time was resonating with people more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, it's so fun to go back through and be like, dang, I'm good. Exactly. Thank you, Stephanie. I so appreciate that. Yeah. So, I mean, if anybody has other questions, obviously feel free to let us know. Megan is working on a maternity leave planning template, but we're actually going to give you guys a little wait list to get on for that because, well, I'll let you speak to this too, but I'll share it from my part. What we have realized as we've gone through this process is that I think I hear this from a lot of women, but I haven't had this experience yet, but I hear from a lot of women that sometimes you can plan so much for the birth that you forget to plan for the after. Right. And I think similarly with business, sometimes you can plan so much for the maternity leave that you forget to plan for the after, which was what Megan was saying earlier. And so it actually doesn't make sense for her to release the template right this second because there's still more of the after that we're planning for that's coming. But it's coming and it's so good. I literally have, hold on. I just have to show people this because I'm so proud of it. And by it, I mean you. Like, this is like a maternity leave schedule for me of things I need to think about. I also have
you printed it.
I printed it. I also have a late season labor checklist that Megan has made for herself and for our team and all of this stuff, right? Like, so all of that will be in there. It's just, I mean, you can talk about the rest, but as a business owner, like, you need the stuff after, not just the stuff during.
Yeah. Because originally I mentally had been preparing to get the template kind of like ready to release today, like as we were talking about it, because I figured it would be obviously very relevant and super helpful. But as we got closer, I was like, well, we're still kind of in the process. And there's still a lot of stuff that, I just created that checklist, late season labor checklist, like a couple of weeks ago or something, or a week ago. So I'm still kind of in the middle of outlining a lot of the different things. And so I just feel like it would be, yeah, exactly. So I wanted to essentially just make sure that I'm adding those things into the template so that it's not just you're prepping for going in labor, but also prepping for the actual like maternity leave and after. So I do have a wait list available that you guys can sign up for. It's at whitespace.team/planning. And basically just sign up and then I'll notify you as soon as I have that available. Also, if you have something where you're like, hey, like questions or like, how did you plan for X, Y, or Z, or how would you handle, this type of situation or something like that, feel free to email that to me and I can add those types of things into the template too, because I think that, obviously I'll be sharing a lot of what we've done for Lacey's business and her maternity leave, but also I'm going to be including aspects that would be relevant no matter what your business model is and all of that kind of stuff. So definitely sign up for that. And then I am going to be opening up one intensive as well. So basically, like,
you're welcome for whoever gets this, by the way. Like, it was like, I mean, I could. I was like, I think you should.
So if anyone is currently planning maternity leave or any extended time off, I'll have one space open in starting in April to just meet for a 2-hour session, map everything out, get all of the details planned, talk about like obviously marketing side of things, team planning, how to get your team on board with everything, client type of stuff, and all of the things that will help you and your team prepare ahead of time so that you can really take the time off and feel really supported during however that long that ends up being for you. So all of the details on that are, it's the same link. So just scroll down, just email me if anybody is interested in snagging that spot.
Yes, I highly recommend it. Seriously, I would have had multiple meltdowns without this. So trust me, it's worth it. Nasheen said, what does repurpose mean exactly? Same posts and tweaks. Yeah, basically like we will use old content. A lot of times we'll update it in new ways. Sometimes we won't even update it because it still is just as relevant and all of that. So yeah, it's just basically about making use of the collateral that you've already created. You know, I think sometimes with content, it can feel like you just make it and then it dies instead of like you make it and you save it and then to reuse it 6 months or a year later. Like it's literal assets in your business. And so that's how we think about it. Michelle said it will be interesting after the fact to see what y'all think is still relevant, what gets added. Yeah, for sure. Mandy said, if you aren't pregnant, will it work? Totally. Yes. I mean, you can speak to that, Megan, but 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like basically anything that is for if you're wanting to take an extended period of time off in your business. So it could just be, even if you're like taking a vacation or some type of like, you know, you're going to be traveling. So even if you're still working a little bit, but just not the same amount and it just kind of looks different or something like that. Like, I think it's just any type of like, you know, big extended time out of your business and still wanting to make sure that the business is still running and working for you while you're gone.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's really what it is. Like we've had the obvious benefit of it being a pregnancy in the sense that we knew, you know, whatever, months in advance.
Yeah.
But like, you know, that's also really relevant for many large trips or time away or whatever too. So I think like it's really totally the same. Okay, awesome. So get on the wait list if you want the template. Definitely, if you're interested in the intensive, email Megan. I really cannot recommend that enough. It has been just absolutely life-giving to have that support and this amount of planning done. And so again, just wanting to normalize that, like, yeah, this stuff does take planning though. Like, I think like,
yeah,
you know, there's no sugar coating that, you know, I think that this idea that we should all have businesses that like we could walk away from it any second is not the case, but it's also really possible. Like this is exactly what I would have wanted. I would have wanted this amount of time and like to come back in this way. There's no like sacrifice I feel like I'm making here, but it has required a lot of forethought. So make sure you get that support. If you guys have questions, let me know. I'll be back next week. My last one will be April 2nd, and I have some good stuff planned for you guys in the meantime, and then you'll have all of our amazing clients. So thank you, Megan, for being here. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you as always. Bye, guys.